The Duke of Pyrewood heard his wife called a beggar before he had got both boots through the door of the bridal salon. "Take your hands from her," Rothwell said, in a voice that stopped every needle in the room, and the tall attendant who had Nerissa by the elbow let go as though the sleeve had scalded her. They had put her out onto the wet step. That was the thing he would not afterwards be able to stop seeing. His wife of 3 weeks standing in the rain in Cramer Street with her bonnet ribbon dark with water, and her appointment card down in the gutter where somebody had let it fall. He bent and picked the card out of the puddle and read it, and the ink had not run enough to matter. "Your Grace." Madame Aubrey had come flying up the shop from the back with her spectacles pushed into her hair. "Your Grace, forgive us. I did not know you were expected. We have had a difficulty. A person came in off the street and my girls only." "Bring me the order book," said Rothwell. He did not raise his voice. He had learned a long while ago that a raised voice gives a room somewhere to put its fear. A quiet one leaves it nowhere at all. He held the door open with his own hand, and Nerissa came back in out of the rain, and he saw her hesitate on the threshold because she was wet and her boots were filthy and there was a Turkey carpet. "Come in," he said gently. "It is only a carpet." She came in. The salon was full of witnesses, which he had not arranged and did not regret. Lady Halbrook sat enthroned upon the fitting days in a half-made gown of ivory gros de Naples with her daughter beside her and 3 assistants kneeling at the hem. The tall attendant, Miss Purcell, stood by the pier glass with her hands folded and her chin high, having not yet understood anything. A little apprentice of perhaps 16 hovered by the pin table with a shawl over her arm, and her face was scarlet. Rothwell had come to Cramer Street at noon to collect his wife and take her to look at a pair of carriage horses. He had been at his solicitor's since 9. It had not once occurred to him that a woman could not walk into a shop and be served. He looked at Nerissa. She had walked, of course. She had come from Alderhurst, where she taught the foundling girls their letters on Wednesdays and Fridays and always had, before he ever spoke to her and after. And she had given her hackney fare to somebody on the way because she always did that too. And so she had arrived at the finest bridal house in London in a grey stuff gown with mud to the ankle and a straw bonnet whose ribbon had been mended twice. What was said to her? He asked the room. Nobody answered. The little apprentice looked at the floor. "Miss Purcell," said Madame Aubrey in a voice like a thread pulling. I said. Miss Purcell replied, with the steadiness of a woman who believes she is about to be commended, that this is not a house that fits charity cases, and that parish office is in Draycott Street. I said it civilly, Your Grace. We have our custom to consider. Lady Halbrook was upon the days. I remarked, Lady Halbrook said, examining her fan, that a woman who cannot keep her hem out of the mud has no business among wedding silks. It was not unkindly meant. There must be some order in the world, or where are we? Where indeed, said the Duke of Pyrewood. Madame Aubrey brought the order book with both hands, the way a curate brings a chalice. He set it on the counter and opened it at the day's page, and he read out from it in the flat, carrying tone he used in the Lords, and he took his time. 10 o'clock, Mrs. Ivory Sedge, alterations. 10:30, Lady Halbrook and Miss Halbrook, trousseau, second fitting. He turned the page. 11 o'clock. He stopped. The room had gone so quiet that he could hear the rain on the awning outside. 11 o'clock, Rothwell read. Her Grace the Duchess of Pyrewood, wedding gown for the blessing at Alderhurst, the 4th of June, 60 yards of Honiton lace to be shown. Madame Aubrey to attend personally. He closed the book. He heard Lady Halbrook's fan strike the boards of the dais. He heard one of the kneeling assistants make a small sound. Miss Purcell's hands came apart at last and went to her mouth, and she looked from him to the muddy hem of the grey stuff gown, and back, and the colour went out of her entirely. My wife, he said, has been standing in your street in the rain for 11 minutes. Your Grace, Madame Aubrey had begun to shake. There has been no announcement. There has been nothing in the papers. How was anybody to? There has been nothing in the papers, Rothwell agreed, because my grandmother was dying and she wished to see me married, and we were married in the chapel at Pyrewood upon a Tuesday with 4 people present, and she lived 9 days after it, and was very happy. The world was to be told at the blessing in June. I did not think it would occasion any difficulty. He looked at Miss Purcell. It seems I was wrong about that. But note what you are telling me. You are telling me that you did not know she was a duchess. You are not telling me you would have been sorry to do it to anyone else. Nobody spoke. He drew a chair out from the wall himself and set it, and Nerissa sat down in it, wet through, with her hands in her lap, and every woman in that salon looked at her. Now, said the Duke of Pyrewood, taking off his own greatcoat and putting it about his wife's shoulders, bring the lace. Madame Aubrey brought the lace and brought the pattern books, and brought tea in the good service, and would have brought the roof off her own house if he had asked for it. Rothwell stood by the window with his hands behind his back and let her. The house of Pyrewood, he said at last, has dressed its women here for 61 years. My mother, my grandmother, every bride of the name since the old king's time. I shall write to you before Friday about whether that continues. Madame Aubrey sat down without being invited, which he pretended not to notice, because the woman was 50 and had gone the colour of paper, and the loss of a ducal custom would take the rest of the street with it. It was Nerissa who spoke. She had not said one word since the doorstep. Your Grace, she said to him quite formally, because there were strangers present. May I ask something? You may ask me anything in the world. Then I should like the custom to continue, said his wife, upon 3 conditions. He inclined his head and did not smile, and wanted very much to. She named them. That the apprentice by the pin table, who had run for a chair when nobody told her to and had offered her own shawl in the doorway, be raised to the fitting room and paid accordingly. Her name was Beskel, and she had a good hand with a needle, and no friends in the trade. That the girls of the Alderhurst Foundling School be fitted for their service gowns in that house at cost twice a year, in the front room and not the back, and that Miss Purcell keep her place. At that last one, Rothwell did turn his head. She has a mother in Bermondsey, Nerissa said. I heard her speak of her while I waited. Turning her off would only make another woman cold and hungry, and I have been both, and it did not improve my character. And the apology, he said. She may make it to me when she means it, said Nerissa, and not before. I would rather have it late than have it now. Miss Purcell, standing by the pier glass, put her hand out to the frame of it as though the floor had moved. In the carriage afterwards his wife was silent for a long while, and then she said, You need not have done all that, and he found he could not answer her at once. He had married her in a hurry because a dying old woman had wanted it, and he had told himself at the time that this was the reason. It was not. He had first seen Nerissa 2 winters before, in the yard at Alderhurst, carrying a sick girl in from the gate through sleet with her own cloak wrapped round the child and nothing round herself. And he had stood at his grandmother's carriage window and watched her do it, and had gone on thinking about it for 2 years. He had not known how to begin. He was a man of 38 with a great name and no conversation, and she was a schoolmistress with £11 a year, and every approach he could imagine sounded, when he rehearsed it, like an insult. I did not do it for the shop, he said. I did it because I have spent 3 weeks discovering that I am married to you, and today I discovered what it costs you to walk down an ordinary street. I find I do not accept the terms. They are the terms everyone has, Nerissa said. Not any more. The blessing at Alderhurst was upon the 4th of June, and it was not a quiet affair. He had the church full. He had the Foundling girls in the front pews on the left, in new gowns made in the front room of a house in Cramer Street, and the tenants of 3 estates behind them, and the whole of the fashionable world crammed in on the right, having applied for cards in numbers that made his secretary despair. Nerissa came up the aisle in Honiton lace over ivory silk with her grandmother's plain garnet cross at her throat, and Rothwell, waiting at the chancel step in his blue coat with the Pyrewood ring on his hand, discovered that he had forgotten every word he had meant to say. He said them afterwards on the church steps, in front of everybody, because he had learned in Cramer Street exactly how much a thing is worth when it is said where people can hear it. You will know, he said, that we were married quietly in April, and that some of you have heard a story about a bridal house. I shall not correct it, because it is true. My wife was put into the street as unworthy, and she was, at that moment, already Duchess of Pyrewood, and it made no difference to her at all, because she has never once in her life measured a person by the state of their boots. He put out his hand and Nerissa took it. She teaches at the school behind you on Wednesdays and Fridays and will continue to. She has asked me to spare the woman who insulted her. I mention it so that nobody here mistakes gentleness for weakness, or supposes that my wife requires defending. She does not. But she has me, and I am not gentle, and I keep a very long memory. Lady Halbrook applied for a card to the Pyrewood ball in October and did not receive one, nor in the January after, and in the spring she called at Pyrewood House in person in grey, and stood in the great hall and made her apology to the Duchess with 14 people at the top of the stairs to hear it. Rothwell watched from the gallery and said nothing whatever. He had not required it. The world had simply worked out on its own whose favour was worth having, which is the only kind of humbling that lasts. Nerissa forgave her within the minute, and asked after her daughter, and sent her away with a subscription list for the school, which Lady Halbrook headed with 50 guineas. Miss Purcell's apology came in November, 7 months late, in a letter of 4 pages that Nerissa read twice and answered kindly. She rose to first hand at the house in Cramer Street the following year. Beskell cut the christening gown. There is a portrait at Pyrewood, in the long gallery, that visitors always stop at. It is not the state portrait with the coronet and the ermine which hangs at the far end, and which nobody looks at twice. It is a small one, and it shows the Duchess in a plain grey stuff gown with her bonnet in her hand, and the hem of it, if you go close, is painted quite distinctly with mud. He had commissioned it himself, and he had told the painter exactly what he wanted. And when Nerissa laughed and asked him why on earth he should wish to remember that day, the Duke of Pyrewood took his wife's hand and turned it over and kissed the palm of it, and said that he did not wish to remember the day at all. "I wish to remember," he said, "that the finest woman in England once stood on a doorstep in the rain, and that I was fortunate enough to be walking up the street.